Hello YouTube, this is Red Ogre and this is the second episode of the Victim Complex Chronicles. Today what I want to talk about is internet social justice warriors and the way that they use their assignment of guilt to sort of rally for their cause. What they basically build all of their rhetoric around is the idea of being either privileged or oppressed. And the way they see it, if you are not a member of an oppressed group, you are by definition a member of a privileged group. And if you're a member of a privileged group, you're basically, your default position is that you are an oppressor. Because according to them, if you aren't doing something to fight for their cause, you are benefiting from the oppression of marginalized groups. And if you ask me, this is a big fat sack of bullshit. The example that they usually cite is the history of slavery in the United States. And the idea basically is that if you are the descendant of a slave owner, you have a financial leg up because they were making a whole lot of money on the exploitation of black slaves historically. And this is bullshit for a few reasons. Besides the fact that most white people weren't slave owners and, obviously the descendants of a poor farmer that only farmed for, self-sustaining purposes, they aren't going to benefit from slavery. But, besides that, let's just assume that every single white person in the United States is the descendant of a slave owner. That doesn't mean that every instance of oppression of a marginalized group results in a net gain for people who aren't members of that group. For example, let's say it's really common for the parents of LBGT children to disown them and throw them to the streets because they can't handle that they're gay or transgender or whatever. And if that happens as a cis male, whatever, I don't get shit. I don't benefit from them being thrown out. I don't earn anything. I don't gain an advantage by somebody getting shit on. So if you are a member of an oppressed class, that means that you have a problem. But for that to happen, somebody else doesn't have to be privileged as a result. Just because somebody doesn't have a problem you have, that doesn't mean that they are privileged, because it shouldn't happen to anybody. Nobody should be thrown to the streets by their parents for doing something harmless. So the reason that they use this rhetoric is so that if you are according to them, privileged and benefiting from the oppression of other people, you have this moral responsibility to join their cause, because you are by default in a position of guilt because you're just passively collecting all of this immoral privilege and you have to do something about it, otherwise you're a bad person, and people fall for it. Again, like I said earlier, if a racist cop pulls over a black guy and searches him for no reason whatsoever and just fucks with this guy and just ruins his day, I don't get shit. I'm not benefiting from it financially or anything, and this is a problem, and it is worth addressing, because racism is real, sexism is real, discrimination against gays and transgenders is real, but that doesn't mean that you have to play up this stupid fucking dichotomy of, are you oppressed or are you an oppressor? Like, do you have this default stance of guilt or don't you? And if you do, what are you doing about it? It's fucking stupid. And you know what? Honestly, I people who honestly want to make a change and want to help themselves and each other and other people that are in positions that warrant help, I think it's morally praiseworthy. It's a good thing. And I know this is going to rub some of my viewers wrong, because they're going to have this idea that anybody who's a social activist has to be, all eaten up by this, third wave radical feminist bullshit. But there are well-intentioned people out there, and I do think that they're good people for the most part. But a lot of this is being hijacked by these internet social justice Tumblrina fucking idiots, and that require this narrative that there is a villain in the story, and the villain is you. The villain, and whenever they want to shit on somebody, they always make sure to pick whatever group they're not a member of. They'll be, a lot of these SJW Tumblrinas are usually girls that are aged 16 to 25, and a lot of them are going to college, usually in degrees that don't have any vocational purpose. you like women's studies, gender studies, history, sociology, things that aren't really job oriented degrees. And if you're going to college to study some bullshit like sociology or gender studies or whatever, it's not because you're planning on getting a job. That's just all there is to it. And I guess there's nothing inherently wrong with getting a degree that isn't entirely useful. But if you are going to college to study something that doesn't really matter for your career, you are from a family that expects you to go to college. If you belong to a family that expects you to go to college by default, you are a privileged person because you have money, you have a family that's going to support you through college and expects you to go through college to get an upper class job or an upper middle class job. And they are privileged, and they always ignore this for some reason. And I don't understand why they could so easily jump onto this narrative that, if you're cisgender or you're white or you're male or you're straight or this, that, and the other, that there's like something wrong with it, while totally ignoring the fact that they have a huge leg up just from the fact that they come from a family that expects them to go to college. I myself have privilege, but my privilege didn't blossom out of my cock. I know that I come from a family that is able to financially support me and help me pay tuition and, didn't kick me to the curb when I turned 18. So in that regard, I do have it good. I'm not going to pretend that I have it worse than anybody else to support my argument. But anyway, I'm kind of derailing. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if you're not participating in racism or sexism or this, that, and the other, I honestly think that you're already doing your part. If white people or males or whatever are the bad guy in this story and you're just not doing anything that would qualify you as bad, I don't see why they have to go ahead and further assign guilt to people. But that's where their power comes from. Their power comes from assigning guilt to people, and it's fucking stupid. One such example that really takes this mentality far is the flagship Tumblr page for the fat acceptance movement, which I'll do an episode on the fat acceptance movement later because it fucking pisses me off. But basically this Tumblr page is called thisisthinprivilege.tumblr.com. And here basically they talk about, why skinny people, typically skinny girls, are so privileged. And they go on and talk about, how rough they have it by being fat. And they usually say things like, thin privilege is fitting into one airplane seat. Or, thin privilege is finding clothing that, doesn't rip when you get chub rub, or this, that, and the other. And a lot of these things are just not bound to this oppression by skinny bitches. All of these things come from the physical reality of being obese. If you are just too large to fit into a chair, it's not because you're being oppressed. It's not because there's this socially constructed system that is benefiting from your oppression in their privilege because of it. No, you're just too big. You have physically overwhelmed the reality of the volume that you occupy, and that's all there is to it. There is no socially constructed privilege to go against. There's no system. Nobody's out to get you. This is the fucking bullshit about these people, is that they always need there to be a system. There always has to be a story with a good guy and a bad guy and a victim and the system, whether it's, the patriarchy or thin privilege or one kind of bullshit or the other. They need this fucking social story because they need to be striking out against some fucking system. There is no system. You can have a problem without there being a bad guy in the story, and you can ask for help with that problem or acknowledge that problem or take steps to solve the problem without having to defeat this bad guy. See, that's the thing, though. When people on This Is Thin Privilege complain about the issues that come with being fat, which, by the way, being fat sucks. I used to be fat. I didn't like being fat. I stopped being fat. And I get all the things they say of, not fitting into things comfortably, never finding clothes that quite fit right. All these things come from the physical reality of being fat. And so does being found unattractive is a bad thing. And people are allowed to find whatever the fuck they want attractive. And if somebody doesn't like you, they're not oppressing you. You can deal with your issues without having to have a bad guy, and you can ask for help from people reasonably without having to use this fucking guilt tactic to change their mind about everything and have them base everything about you because you're just a narcissistic little shit that can't fucking handle their own issues, and that can't just stand the fact that you have an issue without being victimized. That's where the fucking victim complex comes from, is if you can't take accountability for yourself and you can't actually come up with practical solutions for things, you just assign guilt and that's it. Full stop. Once the guilt has been assigned, you can turn your back on it. Problem fucking solved. You got to pat yourself on the back and say it's not your fault. Fuck you. And you know what? Sometimes it isn't your fault. If you were born into a family of just crackheads in a shitty neighborhood and you got fucked with your whole life because of your race or your sexuality or whatever, you definitely have a problem. But that doesn't mean that you get to turn around and look at everybody who isn't in the exact same situation as you and be like, there he is, there's the fucking bad guy. Get him, or either you have this original sin to deal with, or you're the bad guy, or just fuck you. Fuck you and your stupid narrative, fuck you and your narcissism, fuck you and not being able to understand real problems, because these fucking Tumblr cunts always talk about their first world bullshit. It's always about who's being represented in video games, this, that, and the other, when there's people with serious issues just because they don't fit into their narrative, and they never ever fucking acknowledge the idea of class privilege, because they have it. They have class privilege almost all the time. I know there's some, I guess, lower income people on Tumblr because, the internet isn't a luxury for the ultra rich anymore. But most of them are in college programs and have parents that support them because they don't fucking make money, and they have this class privilege that they're afraid to acknowledge, because if they acknowledge that they have any sort of leg up or advantage, or if anything is even a little bit easy for them, then they become the bad guy. And then they wonder why it's so hard for, white guys or straight people or whoever the fucking villain of the week is to admit any sort of privilege, because the way that they use it is so fucking accusatory. If they tell you your privilege, it's an accusation, and you have to answer for this accusation, and you have to answer for any discrimination committed by anybody who shares any features with you. It's if you admit there's anything good in your life, you are admitting that you are a villain for some reason, that you're a bad guy in their social justice narrative, and that's a load of shit. And honestly, having a good life or advantages you were born with doesn't necessarily come from your sex or your race or this, that, and the other. And that's all they look at. All they look at is gender and race and whatever other bullshit that they learned was paramount to your social status in their gender studies class, and they will completely ignore anything that identifies your status and what your life is on a case-by-case basis. So let's say if a straight white male was born into a family of crackheads, and when he turned 18, he went to jail for a crime he was framed for and didn't commit, and just his life is shit, and he's had shit his whole life. I'm not going to go up to this guy and be like, whoa, man, good thing you got that, cis, white, straight privilege. Are you fucking kidding me? I don't get it. I don't get why somebody why they think that they can figure out, how good or bad somebody's life is based on this narrow, oversimplified list of features, and how they will completely ignore any situation that a person goes through, because you don't live your life as an aggregate of whatever race or sex or gender you belong to. You live your life as an individual, and shit can happen to you as an individual. Sometimes things are just, sometimes things are not, sometimes you have, things you earned and things you didn't earn and this, that, and the other, and they just can't look at it this way, because they have this delusion that they're so fucking academic and that they're so enlightened and intelligent and educated, because they look at the world in this stupid, dare I say, racist and sexist way, and think themselves like the fucking geniuses of the world for it. So honestly, if anybody's going to look at your life and try and examine it and in an accusatory way or whatever, and see that you have some sort of responsibility to do more than what you're doing, fuck them. If you're not being a sexist, misogynist, whatever piece of shit, if you're not being a racist asshole, then you're doing your job. You're just fine. You are doing all that you need to do by just not being a bad person. You don't have to get roped in to this fucking guilty conscious bullshit that they use to control you. Don't believe them. They'll put themselves out as the good guy. Don't fucking believe anybody who uses this sense of guilt to try and rope you in. It's bullshit. Thanks for listening, guys.